making an example right now. I feel he's doing a fantastic job of holding the court to just the fact that they're still holding him simply based on what I believe the only basis that they have to hold him is that they can't release him because they don't know who he is, because he's not giving the jurisdiction with the name.
So I have a question. Okay, so I understand this when it comes to things that, the question of something being legal as opposed to lawful or unlawful, meaning anything that causes harm, loss, or injury, and legal versus illegal just being anything that's been placed after an act or statute, which means that a person may not engage in this action without special permission, usually for which they have to pay from the government. So, that's why these things can be so arbitrary, and you can have, cannabis is not unlawful, but it's illegal, and you can maybe grow it if you have some kind of special permission or any particular thing like that.
That's a great point. Now,
but for Farmer George, here's my question. Mm-hmm. Hitting somebody with an object, in this case it was a book, should be considered unlawful. So how can he use this kind of tactic to avoid, that's one question. How can he use this tactic of not identifying himself to something that doesn't have to do with legality versus illegality, but unlawfulness, number one. And two, there is some strange stuff going on with the charges themselves, and it's not as simple as it would seem. And that's what we should probably explain, that there's this whole incident with the book is kind of like a front for a whole lot of other stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And the land papers and all that.
When it gets down to it, now when you're talking about the difference between legality and lawfulness with regards to something such as what we're talking about right now, assault with a weapon, okay? If you were to hit me in the face with a book right now, okay, and I were to call 911, mm-hmm. I am involving a third party in this interaction that is private right now, thereby inviting in common law. So now the common law and the courts and everybody else is going to get involved in such an event, okay? However, if I were to hit you in the face and I immediately say, I'm sorry for what I just did, I'm very, very sorry, and you forgive me and don't call 911, then the third party is never involved, and the private interaction remains a secret, because that's what private means.
Right.
It means it remains secret. Forgiveness is given.
You do have the option. I mean, I've had, lots of people have been either hit or had something stolen from them or been wronged in some kind of way, had somebody not pay you back some money. You don't always take it to court.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. The court is actually, I would say court is a last resort.
Should be.
For people who don't know how to negotiate properly in a private manner with whoever that they're trying to exact out whatever it is. Now, George may or may not have been making a point, but when you're trying to talk to somebody and get a point across, if it gets to the point where 911 needs to be called and you invite in that third party, then yes, you are going to be going into the system. You're bringing the jurisdiction of the system in on whoever wants to be it. You're going to have the accuser and the accused. And those two go into...
So she accused him of hitting her, but in fact, she also hit him.
Yes, that is not something that George is necessarily bringing up in court, but it is something that has been brought up in court via the testimony of the witnesses that have been brought to the stand so far. And I need to note that only the Crown has been able to do their prosecution. George has not been able to do his defense yet. The judge left town, so then they had to postpone. Then last time I went to see George, he had an actual a video hearing, and they didn't even allow him to speak, and they were setting another date.
Okay, when Madame Guy was brought to the courts, she did not identify herself as a legal fiction in any way, and although they did take her to jail for 2 months, they were not able to take her to court to have a trial, because she had never fallen under their jurisdiction. She was in the jail for those 2 months under protest and duress, physically dragged there, never signed a paper for anything.
As George is also.
So how can they be proceeding in a trial without having established him as a legal fiction?
Well, I'll have to tell you something here. The difference, it's very important to understand the difference between public and private. When we're dealing with the public, okay, the public carries sway. The public in Owen Sound, the city the town where George and all this is happening, okay? In the town of Owen Sound, the public sway is happening via the media. They have one newspaper there, the Owen Sound Sun-Times, and when they write about George, it's not that Scott Dunn, the editor, the columnist, not the editor, but the columnist for the Owen Sound Sun-Times is necessarily defaming or defrauding or anything like that. In fact, things are actually, now that George is on about his 11th appearance, things are starting to get kind of truthful there. But there was a lot of public sway that has pushed this into George, and basically it's a domestic assault. And I'm telling you, this is where we started in the beginning of this. Last fall, George had quite a bit of support in the courts from not only his friends, but the public.
With the tractors.
Because it had to do with a farmer traveling down the road and a female officer, an officer pulling him over and exacting an excruciatingly large amount of authority over him, at which he did protest and not consent at that time, and was then arrested, thrown into the car.
Oh yeah, but it is pretty different this time. That's what I'm wondering. Like, how is this going to turn out for the whole, pre-men?
What do you know for sure?
Well, we're going into a break, but stay tuned. I'll be back with Max Radico on the TrutherGirls in a moment. And it's the 16th of August. I'm here with Max Radico of Grasshopper Media. We're talking about the Farmer George case, which goes a lot deeper than just your average, assault case, because of Farmer George's philosophy, which is basically the free man philosophy, and he's also a Christian. So people are asking...
I don't know if you want to call it free man.
All right, well, let's not label it like that, but he's trying to avoid putting himself voluntarily under the jurisdiction of the government. So people are asking about the name issue. Why would somebody not want to give their name, or they're playing games with their name? But they're not playing games with it. You want to explain the whole name thing?
Well, simply it's an ownership issue. It's who owns that name. Do you own that name, or are you the trustee? You're the trustee of that name. You're not necessarily the power of attorney for that last name. Okay? When you claim power of attorney over that name, then you can become the CEO like George did last fall, and actually get himself, talk with the judge, basically almost turn it into a private negotiation.
So he's his own lawyer?
It's hard to explain the intricacies of the entire thing. I would tell you that most lawyers will understand this already. So it's kind of suspicious that all of this stuff about the name, it's almost mainstream information.
I just want to add something that, in case, for those of you who really don't have any background in this kind of thing, what it starts with is your birth certificate. When you are registered at birth and you're given a number, and a stock certificate is created, and so which is traded on the stock exchange, and you become basically an employee of the Corporation of Canada or the U.S. And so then as an employee, you are then down the road, given government-issued ID, which is not the same as, government-approved ID. It's government-issued, and just like someone who say in the military, anything that's government issued belongs to the military. Anything that's military issued really belongs to the military. So in this way, the ID issued by the government basically belongs to the government and identifies you not as the human being that you are, but as the legal fiction, which is created with your name, first name last name first, and identifies you as an employee of the corporation. So if you get into a situation where you're dealing with the police and they ask you for your ID and you present government-issued ID, you now give them jurisdiction to engage in a financial transaction with you, basically to apply acts and statutes to you, issue tickets and things like that.
Let me speak on that for a sec. With regards to the public and the private, what we're saying here, and then with the ownership and who happens to be the trustee of that actual name, okay? So what happens is you are in